Welcome to RezRootz, everybody. We are so happy that you are joining us today on our brand new episode, Mexico. We have here today Kyon and Aaron as they speak about their trip to Mexico with their best friend Martha, and we talk about their journeys from their highlights to the things they learned to the new friends they made, and also the trials and challenges that they also face while during their travel. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope to see you in our future episodes as we continue to make more throughout the summer. So without further ado, here is Aaron and Kyon as they talk about their brand new episode, Mexico.
Yeah, so my name is Aaron Batsili. I'm originally from Bloomfield, New Mexico. Finished my fourth year here at Indian Bible College and be going into my fifth year. Be graduating next year with my bachelor's. So I'm looking forward to the end of the road here. So and looking to what's after. So
well, my name's Kyon Yazi. I'm a fourth year student, but it's my sixth year. Ready to graduate too next year with Aaron and several other students too. So, yeah, that's what's up.
Oh, yeah, and I'm Navajo too. So I think we're Navajos. So maybe.
Conspicuously.
So, I guess today we're going to just kind of be talking about our trip to Mexico. We were part of what IBC does for the summer, which they got started last year, and which is called IBC Summer Missions Trips. Pretty simple. But so this year was the second year these things have happened. These trips have happened, and for us, we went to Mexico. We were there from about 11 days or something like that, maybe 10. But we just recently got back this past Tuesday on June 4th. So we're just here to share about our trip with you guys, and so we'll just dive right into it with the first question. Where did you guys go, and how was the traveling process?
Well, we went to Mexico. We went to Mexico in the state of Sonora, Mexico. We were in 3 locations. We got to, I really forgot. Pesquera is the name of the first town that we stopped at. And then Hermosillo, Miguel Alemán. Then after Miguel Alemán, then we went back to Pesquera. And from there, we went up to Luis Sanchez, right basically on the Sonora, Baja California state line in Mexico. Yeah, that's where we went.
Yeah, the traveling process was pretty simple. We first for us as me and another staff member named Martha, she came along with us, and we met the team that was going to be going down, and we met him in Phoenix. And the main guy that hosted the whole trip was Mike Hendricks. And so we started off with him, and then he had a 15-passenger van and a very small trailer. Well, not too small, but it was enough to carry equipment like PA system to a movie screen and just the things that we needed, like air mattresses or like a cot and just our luggage. So there was a team of us of I think it was 7, Mike Hendricks, me, Kyon, and Martha. A gentleman named Robert Newhall, and then 2 other native men from New Mexico, Leon and Robert Sloman. So they traveled with us, and it was pretty interesting just traveling 15-passenger van, all of us cooped up. But I'm glad his AC was working, and we ran into a couple problems with his van. We were on our way to Miguel Alemán, and we ran into something. Was the engine lost power or something, and so we had to pull over just outside of Hermosillo, and we're all trying to figure it out. And I was trying to figure out what it could be as well. But then we just kind of sat there for a bit, just sitting out in the sun, and these guys are just chilling.
We were reading our Bibles. We were being good spiritual students.
Good spiritual students. And while these guys are doing that, I'm like just sitting there like, man, I should have brought my tools. I should have did this. But it was also a chance for us to kind of see how we would respond. I think that was kind of cool too. We were just very patient with Mike, and I knew Mike from that point too was a little, how would you say it? It kind of bothered him a little bit, just because, he's the host. He's trying to make things work all together, make things happen for us. But just this little, I don't know what you want to call it, disturbance that happened for us. But, I'm just grateful that it was a minor issue, fuel pressure sensor, very easy to fix. So it was kind of cool hanging out in Hermosillo for one night and just, letting that all get fixed. And then we had a problem with a tire, which was easy just to get it replaced, change a tire. But thankfully it happened where there's nice cool weather too. It wasn't one of those hot days. So, but yeah, we all traveled together. We went to different, like Kyon said, we went to different locations, just to all these locations. And we pretty much would go to these camps. So what these camps was these farmers are ones who go out to the grape vineyards. And so it's basically like a dormitory that is set up for them, and they're able to live there. They're housed there. There's laundries, there's showers, bathrooms, like a concession area, some food place, everything that they need, basketball court, just things that they can just basically live in space. And so we travel to these places and do our evangelism stuff. And, that's where me and Kyon were able to share our testimonies. And Kyon was pretty cool, man. He brought out his voice and, sang for the people, which was one of the coolest things that I got to see on there. And so that's kind of what we did. We traveled. That was kind of like the process. We went every evening. We went to these camps and visited all these farmers. I mean, ranging from maybe like 14, 15 years old to, I don't know, 60, 70.
Yeah, but around their 20s too.
Yeah. I mean, there was one camp we went to, and it was just nothing but young people. And it was interesting to see, but, so that was one of the huge main focus of that. And so that was where a lot of our travel went, just going to where we were staying, and we would go to these camps and go and serve these people. So question number 2, it says, we have our experiences traveling out of the States. And as for me, I went to Israel last year as part of IBC's first time, the summer trips. So last year I went to Israel. And where did you go?
I went to Kenya.
That's it? Just Kenya?
I went to Kenya.
So we got to experience something different outside of American culture. But the question is, how is it for us to adjust to this whole another different environment and culture? Was there just some similarities, or what was your experience with that?
Yeah, it's pretty different. Like skin color wise, places are different, but landscape is like, it's really not much of a difference, because going back to Kenya last year, where we first started out in the place of Nairobi, Lake Naivasha, Eldoret, those places were like green areas. So it was like high elevation, kind of similar to like high mountain areas, but also mid mountain ranges too. So there was but once you get to the lowlands and things start turning a lot into like the Phoenix Valley area down to Tucson. So, I mean, it's the temperatures there in Kenya, pretty similar, except for the high elevation areas. But in Mexico is it was hot. Couldn't get away from that. But I think, it was really, despite that, it was really enjoyable. I really had no issues with the weather. I was very comfortable with it. I dressed loosely too, but not loosely. I just dressed comfortably. I was dressed for the weather. So, but yeah.
Yeah, the other guys were wearing jeans, so it was I wore jeans, but it was manageable. But I was wondering how these guys were doing it as long as they did. What about the culture?
The culture, I would have culture-wise, it was how do I say it? How can I put this without being, I guess you could say in American culture, everyone tends to be a little loud, in your face too, in a way. I feel like that's how it is because even on the reservation too, there's a total difference between, those from the rural areas, those from the reservation, urban areas on the reservation too. There's some people, some families or communities where it's they're calm and quiet, but other areas, there's that dynamic of, loud and just talking at the top of your voice. But when you go to Mexico, people are it's very different compared to some Latino friends I've had. But there is they're just average, people, very peaceful. very respectful too, and they carry themselves, in a good conduct. And so, I mean, that's pretty much how I viewed the culture there. I just found it very similar to, some parts of the family I grew up in. Just some parts. Majority of the time, it's like we're just being loud and But other than that, is like, I mean, I found the culture very respectful. Not the Mexico I was, expecting.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's what was unique for me as well, because I guess you could say I was trying not to go in with pre-assumptions, of what to expect, and the culture side of it was pretty cool. Like you said, I definitely second everything that Kyon said. The people were very respectful, hospitable, and I know it's been put out there in media that they're very hardworking, and you definitely can see that firsthand. And you can see the family dynamics of them, and food wise, I mean, man, the food was just amazing as well. And that was something unique too, is just seeing the different age groups. I believe they all could cook, and they all cooked their home dishes that is part of them. So I mean, like for here, the only thing I know how to make is hamburger and fried potatoes at times, but these guys, they were making so many different types of dishes, and each one of them was amazing. It was really good. Yeah, so I second everything mentioned about just about the people. Just the city life and kind of like the countryside out of town. It's very similar as it is here. Like when you're like on a reservation, you come to Flagstaff or Farmington or Gallup. It's kind of very similar. It can be loud, very busy, but once you get to the countryside and of these places like Miguel Alemán and Pesquera, it was very unique, just very local they were. And and it was cool to see like each home's selling food, like how
they had their own food stand.
Yeah. So it's kind of like how natives, we all have our, who's selling the picadillies.
Who's got the Navajo tacos? Who's got the burritos?
Yeah, who's got what,
But it's very interesting to see, like, there was people having their own taco stands, and there was some had their own mixture of, American food types. And then people selling their merchandise. Then you see pharmacies too.
Yeah, that was because like even like so we were able to, because like this was the thing, trying to not have presumptions about the people, but when we got there, one of the things that we right off the bat you see is everything is gated off and it's padlocked, and their homes are secured with gates, and the windows are barred up, and just for security reasons. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of set me off like, okay, where are we going kind of thing, but once you kind of acclimate to it, then as we went off to go kind of see the community, then you start seeing all these places where they're selling food, different types of spin on their foods, and selling different things. Reminded me of Israel pretty much of, everybody's making a living in one way or another, whether it's through food or merchandise. And I think one of the cool things too is just how people know where everything is at and they can go. Because there was a few nights when we come back from the camps and they're like, where do you guys want to eat? There's this house down this way and they got good tacos over there. You guys want to try it? And then the first night, these guys got good. I can't remember what it was. Burgers and hot dogs. And then this is where me and Kyon were fascinated with one of the meals, which was, they were called mummies.
Yeah.
So to go back and try
it. Yeah, very interesting too, because it's just basically a hot dog, but it's like, I don't know how it's wrapped in bacon.
Yeah.
Then layered with cheese. And then, do you remember what else?
I think the hot dog was wrapped in a tortilla, mm-hmm. and then wrapped in bacon, and then it was split open, and then, there's cheese, and then there's lettuce, tomatoes. Yeah, the garnish and all that. So
I only had one, and it was good enough for me.
Yeah, I had two, or I wanted I think I had one, but man, it was delicious. We always
Then he had a hamburger afterwards.
I wanted a hamburger. That was really good, but so yeah,
And Aaron
just
slept like a baby that night.
Yeah.
So very sweet.
no bad dreams. But it was just things like that, culturally. I thought that was really cool, and I really enjoyed it. It was like, man, I want to go spend another maybe 150 pesos to go over here and support this family because those mummies were good, but they were never open again. So that was kind of the hard part. But environment wise, for me, it was just a little differently to see. It's just my perception of some of the things, and I don't want to come off as offensive or I have to be sensitive about it, but it was just kind of like the home style of these people, how they live. Because I have one perception of what poverty looks like, but because some of the things that I did see was just like, at times it felt like it could be far worse than what the reservation looks like. What we as Navajos, what some of our communities look like. Some of us have far better homes than what these guys have. But then again, there's other homes that are not so great. But, it was... So there was some similarities within that, and having to adjust with that was a little challenging in a sense. But then again, it was like, remember where you came from as well, So, but other than that, great experience culturally and just the environment. But yeah, I'm glad the places that we went to also had AC, I think that was a huge plus because I was thinking Mexico, it's going to be hot, and we just have to fend off with fans or ceiling fans and just make do with what we got.
Yeah,
But
I think in Pesquera, Hermosillo, and Miguel Alemán was the highest in temperature-wise. Because
Yeah.
it hit 110.
4, 7, 10.
Yeah, it was the hottest. But when we got to Luis Sanchez, temperatures dropped because majority of the place was farmland. They're right next to the coast, Baja California coast, or what is it called, the Gulf?
Gulf of California.
Yeah, they're right next to it, so it's very nice in the morning. It's not that really wasn't that hot until you get like later in the day.
Yeah. So I'm just glad, these places were like, oh, hey, we got some Americans coming. You guys can use the AC all you want. So I was like, all right, cool. We'll move to the next one because, we're kind of getting to this next part of their culture. Explain the hardship of language barriers and how did we respond to that?
It was like deer in headlight moments where I just stood there looking at them and was like, you know what? I don't know what you're saying, but right on.
Yeah, exactly.
It was hilarious because even like purchasing, I mean, when we go to the grocery stores, the marketplaces, and we have to take our, then it would respond back to the change that we would need. And it's like, I don't know. Can I see a number, please?
I always wanted to look at the screen. Just show me the numbers.
Give me your screen.
Because, every time you would get your products, they ring it up and they would tell you the total in Spanish. So it's like, I do not know what you're saying.
What does the machine say?
Yeah. I felt like that was the most challenging part, I would say, about the trip for me, was just the language barrier. Of course, we're gonna have those engagements in public where we went to these stores or wherever we were purchasing items and just interacting with the people, because maybe they right off first thought we were Mexican too, and so they would speak to us right away, and we'd just be like,
yeah, then Mike would have to tell them like, oh no, they're not Mexican, they're Native American, and they'll have that interest in their eyes, but then they'll realize too that there's a language barrier, and they'll just like, oh, then they'll turn the other way.
The conversation basically stops, and it's like, wait, don't go.
I got Google Translate.
Google Translate was a
you
help,
had
but
Google Translate. I had no data service down there.
Yeah, Google Translation, it is a help, but I think it works differently with each. I don't know.
Yeah, I think too, like when we tried to, there were the churches that we were interacting with, some of the people, well, I shouldn't say just people, but some of our brothers and sisters down there are believing saints in the churches down there. Some of them knew some English words, and they were able to like just communicate with us, and it was very good to have that, language barrier kind of broken a little so that we can have some form of communication. But for everyone else, it's like, I really want to talk with you. I really would like to get to know you. From people in Pesquera to Miguel Alemán to Luis Sanchez, everybody was very hospitable, very welcoming, very gracious. But I mean, it's just that language barrier. But even in Kenya too, that was the main thing. I mean, even having translators was hard, because there were several times that you can tell Mike Hendricks was like, his brain was so fried, and you can tell he was just tired and exhausted. He's overworked his brain so much with helping us translate and when we were sharing our testimony. But I think that was really the hardest part was like, God, there's really so much I want to say, but this limitation is like really hurting so much that it really puts that grief on your bones.
Yeah, for sure. Because like Kyon said, even like some of the people that we talked to in the churches and even at the camps, the second night it was our second night going to the second camp just north of Miguel Alemán. We did our testimonies, we showed the films, and then they gave an altar call kind of thing at the end, and no one came, and until we started putting the stuff away, and all of a sudden a group of young men just came to the trailer and just were seeking prayer, seeking whatever the case may be, whatever they were searching for, they came up to us. And there was this young gentleman, I was able to get his name. And even in that, I was like, what's his name? How do you, and then Mike was he's trying to tell me, say this to him. And I was like, okay, I thought I had it. But when I went to go meet this young man, I was just like, como, your name?
Oye, como va?
Yeah. Just start dancing in front of him.
Oh, no.
No, but then finally another gentleman who was there to kind of help translate, he came over. His name's Robert, and he came and he asked the gentleman his name and kind of just brief description and where he's from. And although I didn't really catch a lot of that because, I was just trying to find out what I could say to him and wanted to pray with him. But I believe he had just given his life to the Lord that night was just in tears that whole time. And it was like you said, you want to say something to them. You want to bring them that affirmation of God's love for them. And that decision that they just made is they're no longer part of this world, that nothing can take them out of the Father's hands now. Is basically you want to give them all this truth just to comfort them. And it was like, but I don't know how to say it. So it was hard because then again, we had to go our separate ways.
I mean, even in that too, I think realizing, the pain of that, but still is like at the same time, considering our time frame and among them, I think, I came to realize like God really laid it on my heart during the trip to like realize that what I shared about my life in my testimony was really good enough. And that was more encouragement for them to just see, God's work in my life, to see what he's doing, to see the confidence I have in God and where all of that is resulting from, that there's no shame or anything, but it's all a result of what God has done.
Yeah. And last thing I came to with all that too was wasn't really our place to, yes, let's bring our message, let's bring our what God has done in our lives, but the responsibility wasn't ours to further on their growth, in Christ. That's going to be the work of like Pastor Dan, and I remember the other gentleman's name at the first church we were at, but just those churches there, now the responsibility kind of lies on them to make sure they go in return and try to cultivate those relationships with them. We're there just to bring more affirmation that God is working in other cultures and other tribes and other people groups in a totally different area, And so that was a great point. And just even like the language barrier still extended towards the teams that we were working with. And one of the groups that was from there were Bible college students from Baja. I can't remember their Bible college name.
Ensenada.
Ensenada?
Living Water. Yeah, Living Water College, Bible College. That's the English
Translation.
It's an English translation of the college.
Google it. But yeah, there was a group of
Agua de Vida.
Agua de Vida. There you go. I think it was like 6 of them, maybe 5 or 6, 7 of them.
Yeah, 6.
But these guys were very young as well, just like the students here at IBC. And one of the girls knew English, so it was kind of helpful to have her around because she was able to kind of help us conversate. But just like any other place, they stuck to themselves. And then us were over here, and that was, there was a part of me that was like, okay, I want to get to know these guys, the young guys, and how can we encourage them and have 2 Bible colleges come together and meet. And maybe there's something that we can do to encourage one another or build a partnership in the future, whatever the case may be. But then again, it was like, they're speaking their language over here, and us were just like, yeah.
So just a bunch of Navajos with our hands crossed looking around like, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So just, the language barriers was, for me, the biggest challenge of this whole trip. It was discouraging a lot of times, but then again, we, like you said, we had our purpose there. Yeah. And so I guess kind of closing out with the last question is, what is the advice that we can give to others who are planning to go overseas or maybe do some international trips?
Pray about it is probably one thing. For me, looking back on my life, we had a lot of missionary friends who just came through our church and visit our family home, and they really poured out into us. And in my family, there are several individuals who did mission work, not overseas, but in the community of Indian Wells, but also in Navajo Nation and cross-culturally with other tribes. My dad being one of them in the rodeo ministry during the 80s and 90s. And so, I feel like, I was really, don't want to say born into it, but raised up in it. And so it was kind of like, that was a really early consideration for me. But being in prayer about it, knowing where God is calling you, and being sure of that call, and that when you're sure of it too, you're at peace with where you're being called to, and the people group. And if you do have that desire for global missions too, is like, I would also just encourage, just averagely, just put it out there, just get your passport, because you never know. It's really just good to have it on you, just in case, you do something either short term, mid-term, or long term. But all in all, just, I would say, be in prayer about it. Always be attentive to what God is leading you. Be considerate about some things that you haven't gone through too. Whatever you haven't gone through, whatever you haven't healed from, make sure you're like, you're walking in that forgiveness. You're walking in a reconciled life, a restored life. Because when you go from here to wherever it is, where God is calling you to serve, things can just like unravel and become a big mess. And I've heard from the people I've served with in Kenya last summer to Mike Hendricks and his team here when we went down to Mexico just recently, they all said the same thing. Just got to make sure, you're right. Not only are you right with God, but you're right with, people and yourself. You can't just dive into it and say, yeah, I'm called to this. But in the end, too, is that the enemy knows how to work his way. If you don't have every part of your life covered in the blood, you're not walking in that forgiveness. That's basically the advice I would give to somebody.
Yeah. For me, like, the advice is, this kind of is parallel to with the Israel trip last year. Because Israel was my first time going overseas and doing anything like that. if you want to consider Canada and Northwest Territories as international, then yeah, that I've been there before, but I was only a kid, so I don't I don't experience problems. The only probably problem I experienced was we didn't get to stay longer. But now as an adult, taking everything in, one thing that I did not want to do on this trip was, and I shared about it already kind of previously, but it was to have a stereotype towards the people. Because in Israel, there's the Muslim people that are around there. So when you look at entertainment and movies, Muslim people are given a bad image. And so going into Israel, I already had that kind of same I put that stereotype on them. And so when I got there, it was like being cautious. I was like knowing my surroundings kind of thing. And it wasn't until I went to the old city and I went to go purchase some things. And I purchased a couple of mugs from this family, and there were Muslim people. And man, they really sat me down. They made me tea, and I sat and talked with the guy for like an hour and a half. And I was like, when I look back at that, I was like, I placed a stereotype on this people group, yet, and for all of them, without even having a clue of who these people are. And so that was one of the greatest conversations I've ever had, just with somebody of a different people group. So going to Mexico, that was one thing. And Mike Hendricks encouraged us to share this too. In a way, when you think about Mexico, one of the first things people will think about is like the cartels and the drug and the trafficking that takes place, and just the reality. I mean, we see it on entertainment as well, and even into politics with the whole border wall and all this. And it really sets a bad image to who the people really are. And so like we shared within this whole conversation was, man, the people are so amazing, mm-hmm. so welcoming, so loving and caring. I mean, just like within clanship, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody wants to cook for you, and they did the very same thing. They want you to eat.
Yeah, and that basically that generosity and hospitality really challenges your emotions mm-hmm. towards them, and it really changes your perspective.
Yeah. And so if you do missions, don't go in with those pre-assumptions about the people and place a stereotype, because some of the people that, you are going to come across, I mean, they're going to be such an amazing people. And it sucks that the entertainment side of things, social media will paint this, I don't know, maybe it's propaganda. I don't know if you want to, but whatever it is, don't take that with you, because a lot of these people are still image bearers of God, and they're people, and they live in these locations, and they're purposefully put there by God. And so before you do missions, consider those things, and just like things, what Kyon had mentioned, especially being prayed up about a lot of these things, and make sure your heart is right, and going in with the right purpose and right attitudes, and maybe even if so, a clean heart.
I will also say too, go in knowing that this is God's work, not yours.
Yes.
And that what you're going to say is not, because this is what I've learned in Kenya and what I've also applied in Mexico, was that everything I'm going to say is actually coming from God. It's coming from a position of where I have learned who God actually is, what he has done for me, and what he can do for others, and what he's going to do, when you give yourself over to him. That's one thing I would also, advise, is be mindful that this really isn't your work, because God may call you to one place for just short term. You may think you're going to go probably, 5 up to 10 years, but you might only be there for 2 years, and God might call you elsewhere. Mm-hmm. You have to be mindful that you're not going to be permanent in one place. That was the hardest thing to hear in Kenya from my leaders was, but I want to be a part of, this mission trip future mission place that God wants me to be at. I feel it, but hearing that, like, you're going to be called to one place for a short time, for a season. Once God's done with you there, he's going to move you on elsewhere. But the work you have done here, he will bring somebody into that to continue the next work.
Yeah, because like at the end of this trip, we went to this place to meet a pastor from the Kokapa reservation, and just to begin some talks about maybe possibility of working with them in the future. And I even in that, it's to say, Lord, that's going to be your thing. But if I'm only going to be a part of it in the beginning stages of helping it get started, and then you pull me away, so be it. So, and that's another transition into maybe the one thing we can add to this is just kind of the encouragement for native people to pursue cross-cultural ministry. Because one thing that Mike had shared with us going in was a lot of these people were very aware of Native Americans. And when he mentioned us being there, it was like they were all ears. They were ready to listen to us. And there was a welcoming aspect to that. And one of the things too I really enjoyed too was you kind of relating the tribal people here with them, and singing the songs. And that was one thing that Mike was really appreciative. He's like, man, I've been waiting for something like this because me, myself, I'm a white person and I can only go so far with the message and take it so far. But it feels like Native Americans can even take it further. And it was cool to see this guy just go off and do his thing, And so for me, then it was too to relate some of that myself was I began to kind of see like how we as a people group have been oppressed over the years, in history. I think when Kyon brought that up, it kind of set the tone for me to kind of, let's kind of connect the people together, and, the message again was to don't be ashamed of your past hurts. Don't be ashamed of, this is not how God sees you. You're not defined by your mistakes, your past sins. But, if you truly believe in the Lord, you are a child of God. You can be a Native American and still believe in Jesus Christ. You don't lose it, So I think one of the coolest things is that's what we did on this trip was try to come from a Native American's perspective and bring that. And this guy took it to another level. And I was like, man, this is pretty cool. So what was your thoughts from that? Like,
I can feel the heartstrings being pulled right now. I mean, it was very emotional. And for most of the upperclassmen, a lot of the upperclassmen are well aware of like how immersed in my Navajo culture I am. I don't mean to be, but I was raised up into it. It's not my fault. But once taking that back too is like, I'm very thankful to actually have that respect for my own culture, because even though it's not just as Navajos, there's other people too. Like you have Nez Perce, you have Apache, there are some individuals from other tribes who have that high respect and honor for their cultures that they come from. But other people will say, oh, you're just traditional. You just, you think you're so sacred. You think you're walking with the ancestors. I mean, they'll say all these things, but when you actually go overseas and you once you take advantage of that and use it for God's glory, God, because we had everyone's ears. Everybody was gathered around listening to us. I meant to sing like Navajo songs, but I didn't have no Navajo song book with me. So I just luckily I had like a White Mountain Apache hymn book downloaded on on a PDF on my phone. And then I also had a Kiowa hymnal on my phone downloaded to a PDF file. And I just pulled some songs from there that I knew right off the bat and just sang for them until a few days later, I realized one of our team members had a Navajo hymn book. But even doing that, singing songs in your own language, really, everyone was so quiet. Everybody had their phone out too, recording.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just cool. I mean, it was a real blessing to see people, become aware of someone who is a Christian, but also has, respect towards their cultural side as well, and seeing God use that for his glory. And so even sharing some stories from my life. Well, they weren't funny stories, but they were like very touching stories from my grandparents' lives. And just using those stories to relate to them, I think that's what drew some people out from the crowd to come and accept Christ. And I think even Martha was telling us, is like they were more willing to come to you guys to pray for them. I think they were actually looking for you guys. They weren't looking for, the Hispanic pastors to pray for them. They were actually looking for you two to pray for them, is what I remember Martha telling us.
Yeah.
And like, well, at least we got some people to pray for some people.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's like your culture it's very valuable, even though, you get mocked at here in America sometimes because of how you value that. But when you go outside of the country and you start, speaking from that point of view to other people, to other tribal groups, it changes the whole dynamic. It changes the whole playing field. It changes how the gospel is being delivered. It changes how missionaries before have done it to how God is intentionally, changing it today. Yeah. And I've gotten to see that now, and I'm very thankful for that. I remember Mike Hendricks was also talking about a Navajo girl went over to the Philippines, I think it was, and it's the way she delivered her first testimony was, I'm about to cry because how she started off, sharing her testimony was because in the tribal group that she was ministering with, they were oppressed. There was a lot of warfare, I think. I don't know how bad the situation was in their history, that the people group that she was ministering to. But the first thing that she said was, we survived. That hit home for me because I was like, oh, my heart. Yeah. Because, every cultural group, even in Mexico, has faced that kind of oppression, has faced genocide, massacre. But to say that, we have survived really shows God's grace in the midst of it, in the midst of turmoil, in the midst of strife, in the midst of heartache, that God can bring something out from the ashes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an amazing thing because, that's, like how he was sharing about that. Then one place I got to share, one of the churches in San Luis, was, you guys are beautiful people. God has created you guys very uniquely, but there's these truths that the enemy is trying to veil, trying to not for you guys to see or even experience these blessings that come from the Lord. And all this guy is trying to do, the enemy is trying to do, is just to steal, kill, and destroy. That powerful testimony of we survived, you guys can too, as a people. Just know that these truths are there. These promises are for you guys. And the amazing thing too, again, it's like the power of God protects you and can transform you into something more, and so that you can reach your people group. But yeah, I feel, if any advice for fellow natives, Navajos, or other native tribal groups here, who are listening, is like Kai said, use your culture, use what God has gifted you purposefully, and use it for His glory to reach others, to encourage those that He's sending your way, because it can be used. And I never felt like that could have been done, because culturally for me, I was raised just with no cultural teachings whatsoever. So now I'm learning more about it. But one thing that my dad did do as part of him was he loved jewelry, and he loved to give them away. And so that's one of the things I got to do on this trip, was to give it to a gentleman who had a very loving heart. You could see he tried to work with us and tried to talk with us. He was one of the guys who actually tried to interact with us a lot of the times. And so I felt like I was like, this is a guy I can give it to. And just to see, even giving him a Navajo necklace, turquoise necklace, it brightened up his day, and just you could tell it encouraged him. And I was like, that's all I wanted to do on the trip, was encourage somebody. And I felt like that I had that moment with him just through something as simple as giving a necklace too, as part of our culture, And so go into it you know, even if it's just one trip that you can do and go overseas or to go to Canada or Mexico, going to wherever God feels like he opens an opportunity for you to go experience a cross-cultural trip like something like Mexico or Israel or France or, the Philippines, whatever the place may be. Even if it's just once, experience it because of just how you can see how God does things and how that can contribute to your ministry back at home and how that's going to grow. So there's a lot to chew on there with advices from us. And I don't know if I don't know how much time we have left, but that's just my encouragement for that, or our encouragement into
I would also
future
say
missions.
but just for short is, do research, like get plugged in with mission organizations. I mean, I think IBC here is probably willing to give you some information about mission organizations if you just ask. Churches that do support mission organizations, I would consider that as well.
Yeah, and as far as IBC goes, they're as I understand, they're looking to try to keep this going for current students, past alumni, past students who have graduated and been part of the IBC in the past. So if you're listening, there's opportunities to be a part of these trips because the goal is to have each student experience some form of cross-cultural ministry work. And hopefully overseas or internationally, like to Mexico or Canada or Northwest Territories, going somewhere different, So that's a goal, and be a little bit of a plug for IBC on that. But, those opportunities are there. And I hope current students right now would take advantage of that. Like, go get your passport now. Mm-hmm. Don't wait. Go and get it done.
Now.
Do it now. After you finish watching this, go.
It's like, go apply.
Apply.
You can do it online too.
Yes. But yeah, I just want to shout out to maybe Mike Hendricks, and just for the opportunity to work with him and bringing us along on this trip and being the forefront of it as far as kind of creating the connections for us to be there, to wearing himself out, interpreting for us. And
yeah, he's also looking for other natives to come along with him too.
Yeah, he's not done. He's going to continue to go, and who knows, he might be there within the next 3 weeks. So, but he's looking for more people to go. So with that, I guess we're done. Thank you guys.